screen, right?
All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and start with the land acknowledgements. All right, I'd like to acknowledge the many tribes and bands who call Oregon their ancestral territory and honor the ongoing relationship between the land, plants, animals, and the people indigenous to this place we now call home. We recognize the continued sovereignty of the 9 federally recognized tribes who have ties to this place and the subsequent bands within those tribes, and thank them for their continuing to teach us how we might all be here together. And next item on the agenda is just a roll call for the youth here. Okay, so I'm here, and then Diana here. Andy.
I'm here.
Welcome. Kiwi. I see you down there. Okay. Okay, great. And then for the last time, Isatu, I've seen her join, but now I don't see her on the screen, so. Okay, that's fine. Oh,
hey, Marcella, I'm here.
Hi, Isatu.
Hi, how are you today?
Well, just wanted to say thank you so much for your time on the council. You and Destiny. Destiny can't be here today. She's working. And so, yeah, just want to take a few minutes just to say thank you for your participation, your effort. And then I think the next step on the agenda is I'll just briefly introduce Brian Detman, which is the executive director. And then we can, I think the director's report is the next thing, right?
Brian will express some sentiment and then do the director's report. Perfect.
Exactly. Thank you. Oh, there's Kiwi. I've spoken to Kiwi on the phone. Welcome, Kiwi.
Hello, how you doing?
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for allowing me.
Andy, to you as well.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, welcome. And then also, sorry, I forgot to mention, if there's anybody who has public comment and wants to introduce themselves, please add that in the chat, just so that we can make sure we make time for that then.
That's perfect, Maricela. I was about to mention that we appreciate other members of the public who are on the call. I see a few folks. We'll reserve a little time at the end for public comment, just as Maricela just said. And if you don't mind introducing yourself in the chat, just name and organization, that'd be great. And again, at the end, we'll have some time for any public comment. This meeting, the majority of the agenda is focused on the proceedings and conversation that the committee is going to have on the agenda items that we've determined. So I just want to start the meeting. Thanks, Melissa, for posting that. Yes, we're recording for those who aren't familiar, and we'll make the proceedings, the recording available on our website after the meeting. But in the spirit of that, just giving some thanks and recognition, and I appreciate, Sanji, you making some space for this in the agenda. And I'm looking for some notes so I don't get this wrong, because I will get it wrong if I don't get to my notes real quick. Give me a second. All right, I just want to take a little time, as I have done, recognize that this committee has, I mean, as we all have with COVID and fires and broader discussions around racial justice and racial reckoning. I mean, there's just been a lot going on for everybody. So it feels like a year in for me in my role, it feels, I don't know if it's been fast or slow or something in between, but here we are a year after I started in my role, and it's just exciting to see the commitment that Maricela and Diana in particular and ISA2 are showing by being here, showing up. I know we would all prefer to be able to like be in person and or see each other's faces, but here we are virtually, and just appreciate the hard work that you have put in. We are sad, but maybe it's like a little bittersweet, Isa, to have you term off or to come off the council, but I know you've got so much ahead of you in terms of your professional pursuits and just other things that you've got going on. So though we're going to not have you on the council, we hope that and know that your contributions, your spirit, like is always with us. You're always part of the YDC family, and who knows, we know your email address, Isa2, so we may tap you for a question, or if you're willing and to provide your insight or connections to potential council members, youth committee in particular. Oh, look at that. Thanks, Jeff, for that note in the chat. Just wanted to Isa2 just thank you for everything and for being here. And I'm going to give you the floor in just a second, if there's anything you want to say, but also want to recognize, though not here, Destiny Ortiz has been a member of the council and the committee. My sense is, after just again as we all facing circumstances and situations, that that it doesn't feel like that the council itself particularly fits for her, but that doesn't mean she's not still part of the family. So I want to recognize and thank Destiny for her contributions. And I'm going to pause. Isa2, is there anything you want to say before I keep going?
Oh yeah, I'll keep it short. Thank you so much, Brian. Thanks, Maricela, and thanks everyone for being here today. I really, it's been such a good time to serve on the council. I remember when I've attended the first meeting in 2019 and got to meet the different people. I walked into that room thinking, wow, here was everybody with so much experience. I was in college. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, but the people in that room really welcomed and created a space where it became more of a space for me to learn and grow as well. Because and the way I've seen, especially Anya and now I'm forgetting her name. Oh, she's gonna be mad at me. You gotta tell me, Anya. Serena, wow, yes. Yeah, Serena, before I, got to work with Sonia and Brian, the way I've seen them lead was more of, you're here to represent young people, but also you're young people that we need to invest in and grow, that you can't advocate for other young people if we're not giving you the skills and the tools that you need to grow. And for me, that has helped me. I've seen women who take up space, who do the work, and who get the work done. And it's been good watching from the sidelines, but also sitting with them and watching how they led. So in doing the work to advocate for young people, we've done some work, we've brought some ideas to the council. We've, even with not understanding policy, for myself, for example, we've been able to bring our stories or the stories of other young people that we've brought. For me, it has always been the stories of immigrant youth and refugee youth. That's my story, but also that's the story of the young people that I've worked with. And that's the perspective I've tried to bring to the council. And I've seen the council try to turn some of that into the real work, into the real policy, or to bring that perspective to conversation. So I'm proud of all we've done together. And I am grateful for all that I've learned. And I haven't gotten to know Brian a lot, but from the little conversations we've had and just hearing your background, I remember the first time we talked, I said, I studied finance, but I don't really know what I want to do. You know, I said, I want to get into public finance someday. I'm not there. My passion is in serving the communities, but I'm where I am at. And he shared about how everything, every role and every job you have right now is a toolbox, right? It prepares you for the next thing. So just from that conversation, it has helped me a lot. And for Sonia, it's been great, just the way you care and lead with your heart. So thank you for really breaking down policy in such a way that it's in my level for me to understand and in a way that leads with the heart. So I want to thank you and my colleagues, Diana and Marcella. Thank you for being bold and brave and for listening and really stepping up and helping to inspire me with your stories, especially. I hear your stories and all you've gone through, but you came out advocating for the young people. So thanks for all you do. And I have so much hope that things will get so much better with you all in the council. And I don't know the other two young men we hear, but I have so much hope that things will be good with the leadership of Marcella and Diana and everybody. And Anya, thanks for all the ways you've loved us and shared your wisdom in everything. Anya was somebody that will share about policy, about everything. She's a mom. So it was good. Thanks for being that also. And I hope to keep my relationship with all of you for sure. I have you on LinkedIn. I have your phone numbers. So I will stop here. I will be on the call, but I'm at work. So I will turn off my video and just listen to what you all are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Isatu. And Isatu, if you have any recommendations or thoughts about potential council members, younger, youth committee oriented folks that can represent that immigrant and refugee story, or more broadly, like it doesn't need to be that in particular, but if you have ideas, we are welcome and would love to continue to expand the perspectives on the council, right, with you now kind of taking a step back. So please, if you
I will do.
Shoot me, send me or Maricela or Sanji or Anya, or all of us together, Melissa, like, hey, here's a name and a phone number, or here's an idea, we'll follow up.
Sure, will do. Thank you.
Appreciate that. And so I just want to also take a few more minutes. I want to thank some other members of the council who are coming off, just though they're not here. I think it's important to recognize John Teague, Chief Teague, Kaiser Police, a longtime Youth Development Council member who's served for 2 full terms, 8 years, been there since the early days. Really appreciate Chief Teague, Alicia Hayes, also another longstanding serving member who's got great background in schools and school boards and kind of local county politics. Isatu, as you know, Jaime Arredondo, executive director in the nonprofit space and just a great community activist and leader in the kind of Salem Kaiser area, but really throughout the state. I continue to be in communication with Jaime around just being a resource and a connection. So we appreciate his contributions. Janet Ahrens, another longtime contributor in advocacy for young people and youth and families in different spaces, particularly around systems improvement and alignment. Janet has just been critical to the growth and development of our council. Destiny, as I mentioned earlier, appreciate her contributions as a part of the youth committee and just bringing that personal passion and lived experience. And then also a judge, Pamela Abernathy, retired judge, but a person who's served the council well, brought that kind of judicial and court perspective to the table. So those folks are turned off, but we're excited to be adding additional members to our council I won't go into depth with all the new folks. Who get to learn about those at the next council meeting in September, but we are excited to have both Andy Santana May and Kiwi Wilson joining not just this committee meeting, but also just more broadly the council. So appreciate both of you being here. I want to open the floor to you both. If there's anything you want to say, any words of quick introduction. We just appreciate your being here. So, Andy, do we want to give you the floor for a minute or two? No pressure. Like just if you don't, if you want to say, tell us anything about yourself that you feel comfortable, just say what you're passionate about. We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So just to start with, I know that as soon as this opportunity came, like I wasn't too aware of what this was all about, I saw that just, being incarcerated myself, like I had to make the most out of this opportunity. I know like with this, like I have a lot of experience just with the juvenile system, and just having that background, like I know that just going through all the different phases of like growing and learning and having to overcome all these circumstances that I'm facing right now, it's led to like opportunities like this. And to me, like I just got excited when we had this first meeting and then the introduction meeting with Sanjay yesterday. So I really appreciate her for that. And but currently right now, I'm just focusing on studying or working towards my bachelor's in business administration. And I'm currently enrolled at Oregon State University. I want to use that major. So I want to use that major to help my family because they own a small residential renovating company. And like, I know with them, they're just focused as like a family business, but I actually just want to help manage them and actually build it more to something more into like a bigger franchise, So that's just what I've been working on right now. And I just wanted to make the most out of this opportunity and continue to learn from all you guys. So that's all I got for you for right now.
That's perfect. Thank you. And Kiwi, we are so glad to have you here. I know you've been like on the Coalition of Juvenile Justice Youth Summit earlier this week. So I know you've been front and center for like being out there on these Zoom meetings. So we appreciate your being here today. We'd love to hear a few words from you.
Yeah, I have experience in the juvenile system as well. From Seattle, Washington. I got into this work by just being an advocate, and being a mentor. And I got the opportunities from Whole Partnership to help with reform the juvenile justice system. And I took the opportunity, and ever since then, at first I was a little sketchy about my career and what I wanted to do. And then doing these Zoom meetings and just seeing how much change that I could do with these Zoom meetings, it just helped. It just basically made me feel better about the work I was doing. So like, even if I wasn't getting paid, I still do this work as volunteer. That's how much I really like doing this work. So it's just like, just trying to help out and give back to my community, really. So that's the biggest thing I really want to do. And career-wise, when I get out, I just want to continue doing this kind of work, juvenile justice. My major, what's called college right now, I'm doing is juvenile justice also as well. So I just want to be a part of the we're helping reform the juvenile justice system and just making it better for all of us all together. And that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you so much, Kiwi. Thank you, Andy. I don't know. I just, if I see Diana shouting out the Beavers. Maricela or Diana, anything you guys want to add or questions before we keep moving?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for your time and your, being able to join the council is really important. We've been trying to reach out to specifically incarcerated youth for a long time because I feel like in a lot of situations, youth voices are not heard. And this is, we need to invite y'all to the table and make sure that, we're speaking about issues that actually benefit and protect you guys. And so I just want to mention really quickly that each youth member of the council has their own experience in like in different youth systems. So like my system specifically, like I've done some juvenile justice stuff as well, and then also like foster care, and then having immigrant parents. And so we all bring different perspectives that are really important, and a lot of times are not heard. And so we're excited to have you guys.
Hey y'all. First and foremost, go Beavs. Let's go. I'm an alum. Went to OSU, so yeah, that's exciting. Welcome. I'm just really excited to get to know you all, work with y'all, learn from you all, and share like the knowledge that I have. I don't know, to be helpful. So I'm excited. Welcome.
Diane, is there anything about your background or yourself that you feel comfortable or would like to share to introduce yourself? We know you're a Beav. We got that to Kiwi and Andy as they try to get to know you all also.
So let me start off with like an event that happened today. So I was at a meeting. I'm a newly licensed broker in the state of Oregon. So I was meeting with someone who comes from a similar background, like doing social services type of work. And the funny thing is, he was talking about his godmother. And she one time stopped by McKay High School, where I went to high school, to collect a UA, urine analysis, back in the day, back in like 2012. So I was like, what a small world, right? Like your godmother. And then my first year out of college, where Brian mentioned Jaime, how I met Jaime and how I was introduced to the council, was at Capaces. And I love to do outreach. I love to get like involved and just, you know, like get to know people and such. I remember reaching out to Success, which is the alternative school. I just don't believe we do enough outreach to certain populations, right, within our community. And I remember sitting at that like decision-making table with Cleo right in front of me. And that was my probation officer's partner. And then now, like, you know, full circle, I'm like, what? And then I met this person and their like family works at McLaren. And I began a program at McLaren during my time at Capaces. So I was like, wow, like what a small world. So with that being said, I'm first generation, youngest daughter, youngest of 5. We got here, all born here, left to Mexico, came back early 2000s. And then short after, my siblings became involved with the criminal system. And like few years down the road, all 3 of us had the same probation officer. And I think back and like school to prison pipeline was very real. I'm always like, dang, I wish I would have been the oldest. Like I would have stood up to these, you know, like I would have stood up to this school administration, or I would have pushed back. Because there was a lot that happened that I don't believe should have happened, or was the correct way to approach situations. And so because of my background, Jaime was like, you know, you'd be a great voice for the council. Like you should get connected. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's how I ended up here. But I really have a passion for like youth advocacy and just youth work in general, and like uplifting youth voices. I think many times like folks want to speak on our behalf, but you know, don't always understand. And like we all have different identities and all bring different things to the work. So yeah, just with that said, like I'm excited and I'm passionate about this work just because I think like my siblings could have, you know, like used this, or like this work should have been done then. And like, I'm just glad to be able to like almost pay it backwards in a way. And although I'm the youngest of 5, I always felt like, you know, the older sibling, and I was the first that went on to pursue a higher education, first time home buyer, officially a year now. And so, yeah, it's all these different things. So I'm just excited to like really learn, because I do believe that we all share wisdom, and it's not just like all these older folks, you know, who are here to tell us. I just really think that we all can learn from each other. So yeah, welcome. I'm really, really excited to, and hopefully like one day this year, hopefully, knock on wood, we can meet in person and just really chat and stuff.
Thank you, Diana. And then I'll just say one more thing quickly. When I began working with the council, it was 4 years ago, and my life has changed dramatically. Not just because of the council, but I felt like more confident pursuing like other careers. And so at the time I joined, I was not doing something that I loved. I wasn't doing something that was like meaningful to me. And so now I work for an environmental nonprofit led by BIPOC folks, which is amazing. And I handle all the fundraising there. I'm the development manager there. And, it's been such a great experience. And I felt like this opportunity here helped me get there, whether it's just like having it on my resume, talking about it in like cover letters, but also like being able to, like Anya and Serena, who is our old executive director, and now Brian, has been so helpful, because like adding y'all's name on a resume, as a contact has been, that does a lot, because like we are trying to enter spaces where it's not necessarily our people, not necessarily people like networks that we're a part of. And so I think this is that door for us, to like be able to talk about our experiences and make sure that, the changes happening really benefit us and other folks like us. So yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you both. Appreciate that, Sanji. Great follow-up. We don't want to spend this meeting where I'm going to refer to myself as one of the talking heads talking too much. So appreciate this, and I'll just quickly shout out like the fact that I know we heard from Jeff in the chat, but Robbie and Justin and Julie and Michelle, if y'all want to just quickly introduce yourselves in the chat, we certainly encourage that. And then again, we'll have time at the end for public comment. In terms of the director's report, I sent out an update to our council just yesterday, in fact. So don't want to spend too much time of today's meeting on the kind of other director updates, other than to say we've got a quarterly council meeting on September 9th at 9 a.m. So make sure to mark your calendars. Let Melissa, who's here, know that you'll be in attendance. We've been in communication with all of you about this, but just want to make sure that folks have that on the calendar. That'll be from about 9 to 12:30. Have a lot to cover in that meeting. Government, reopening, y'all are aware, I'm sure, either directly or indirectly, with all that's going on with this Delta variant. So I first encourage you all to stay like safe and healthy in what is a, kind of a changing situation. And then I know it differs from county to county and space to space, but certainly just, take care of yourself. We're looking at that as a division, and our next meeting will be held virtually. So we still don't have the opportunity to get together in person. Maybe we'll look at December as a potential. But I know that, and I'm committed to, if, and we talked about this earlier this summer, I think it's still possible for this committee and some of the members, maybe ISA 2, maybe Destiny, I don't know, if there's some way to organize some kind of in-person something or other, I don't know, maybe we can figure out a way to visit Andy and Kiwi. I don't know, I'm open to it, and I have checked on all the rules and all the particulars about having a group of council members come together. And as long as we are not coming together to talk about a particular council decision or council, vote, we can meet. We could meet virtually, we could meet in person, we can meet in some context. We are not violating any rule by just getting together. There was some confusion about that in the past. So I'm just here to tell you, as long as we're not talking about council or trying to sway votes and talk about council business in a very specific way, we can figure out some of that in-person stuff. So again, given the Delta variant and all these other things going on, we want to be careful and safe, but just know that I think we should be able to pull something off in the near future. And maybe even if it's a council meeting together in December, and we pull the committee together before or after that, even if just informally. And I know too, we've started to get some momentum on this mentorship. So for Andy and Kiwi's knowledge, we have, thanks to this committee, they have been in touch with other council members about mentoring some of the youth committee members. Like if you're interested in a mentor from the council, that opportunity now exists. And so we can talk more about that down the line if y'all want, or if you have questions, but know that the opportunity to say, oh, I would like somebody who's been on the council for say more than 2 or 3 or 4 years, but who's willing to kind of show me the ropes, even if they've termed off a Jaime or a current person, to BD Lewis. There's a whole host of names. Celeste Jansen, right? We've got a whole bunch of people. So know that mentor opportunity exists. And then I'll say this too, Melissa is working on a kind of orientation and onboarding for new council members. So we're working on the dates and the logistics of that. So for Kiwi and Andy, that's the more information to come, but we will, outside of like a committee meeting and outside, we'll sit down. It will probably need to be virtually, to be honest with you, but just to kind of give you here's the mission, the vision, here's the strategic plan, here's all those little technical things, answer your questions, talk about what policy development is. We won't make it hours and hours. But what I mean is we won't make it half a day, so you're just like all like falling asleep on us. We'll try to make it interesting. So that's that. Excited about some new members. What else? I think I'll leave it there. That's the report that I've got. Just excited to have everybody assembled this morning. I'll turn it back to maybe Maricela or Sanji.
Yeah, I'll just introduce Sanji Moore. Sanji Moore is the YDD's Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator, and she'll just give us an overview of our last meeting, which was May 14th, 2021.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Maricela. Thank you, Brian. I hope that you all are doing and feeling well and staying safe and staying cool and hydrated because it's hot. So before I get into the meeting summary from our May 14th meeting, I would just like to echo the gratitude to Isa2 and Destiny for their service on the council, for their participation on the youth committee. I hope that this is not goodbye, it's just until next time. And definitely know that, you all are part of the family now. So we might be still emailing you or texting you, and not just because of this work, but because of who you are, and to make sure that things are going well for you and to be able to follow your success as you continue to go to your full greatness and destiny. So thank you all for the opportunity to briefly get to know you and work with you. It was my honor and my pleasure. And so I would also like to welcome Kiwi and Andy to the Youth Development Council and to the Youth Committee. I had the opportunity to briefly meet with them and connect with them on yesterday. And I'm just thrilled for the opportunity to be a part of their village, to work with them, to learn from them, to support them in the goals and in this work as we attempt to chip away at change. I might need to write that down. I like that. Chip away at change. because it's definitely a work in progress. And as I was sharing with them yesterday, when you're working in government, a brilliant idea sometimes takes a very long time to become a reality. So it's a process, and I'm thrilled for the opportunity to work with you all. So welcome. As Maricela stated, I am the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Coordinator for the Youth Development Division, but I also have the immense honor of being the staff liaison to work with the Youth Committee. And so I'm glad that we've gotten a lot of the things that I was hoping to do out of the way, which was a brief introduction for our existing members with our new members. So that is awesome. And I just wanted to go over some of the things that we touched on, because it will lead into today's meeting and our last meeting, which, as Maricela stated, it was May 14th. So one ongoing theme that we have, like Brian heard this amazing phrase, and we've kind of adopted it in the work that we do: nothing about us without us. And us is young people. And so we don't want to do work that affects young people without engaging them, amplifying their voices, and bringing them to the center of the table so that they can have equal voice and decision-making in the work that we do. So we continue to reiterate that nothing about youth, without them. And as Brian shared, one highlight of our last meeting was the opportunity for our youth, young adult members to have meet and greet with two of our more senior members, Parasa Shanrami and Celeste Jansen, in kind of just meeting and then also kind of discussing what a mentorship program would look like between our young adult members and our more experienced members. And I think it was a great planting of a seed. And as Brian shared, I'm so glad to know that, meeting and the connection between mentee and mentor does not have to be a formal meeting that has to be noticed and put a public agenda up, and a lot of logistical things that we now have clarity about. So that's awesome to know. And hopefully soon we can try to expand that so that Kiwi and Andy can meet some of our more senior members to try to get a feel for who they may would like to be their mentor, and the same for the more senior members to meet and interact with Kiwi and Andy. And also hopefully we will have more YDC members who have more experience to volunteer to be a mentor. We definitely leave the floor open for that. One of the things that we discussed, which has come to fruition, which we can check off, was how do we recruit young people with lived experience, with voices that need to be heard, to be a part of the Youth Development Council. And, I think it's excellent that we have accomplished that in part. And I know that Brian's goal is to expand that even more, and I 100% support that. So we have been able to recruit 2 new young adult members to the council, and that was something, and it will be an ongoing conversation about how we continue to engage young people. Anya Sakino and I, our juvenile crime prevention member, had the opportunity to attend the Coalition for Juvenile Justice's Youth Summit, which was August 9th and 10th virtually. It was originally scheduled to be a hybrid, virtual and in person, in Tacoma, Washington, but because of the current state of health in our country, public health rather, it was changed to just virtual. And so that was Monday and Tuesday. And as the universe would have it, Kibi was a very integral part of that summit, and he had the opportunity to discuss and present and be a panelist on a lot of the workshops. So hopefully at some point in the future, those recordings will be made available to us. And as I hope to do later, we will be able to watch some of those as a group and discuss some of the themes that were present that connect and intersect with a lot of the work that we do for as we move forward. That was something that was discussed. We also discussed social media. And as I was preparing for this meeting, you know, the universe just opened up this really good idea, and I'll share it with you all later. And I hope that you all consider it and marinate on it and think about it, and that it's something that we could really do, because I think it would be amazing. It's a modified form of social media, and it's something that's really prevalent in our society right now. But we were all in agreement that one way to reach youth is through social media, and trying to figure out how we could do that safely and effectively, because we know that there are a lot of predators out in the technological universe who prey on social media sites. And, you know, also figuring out staffing levels for who would be over the social media site. Could our council members do that? So there are still some logistical things to figure out with that, but hopefully, and Brian has had some initial conversations with our sister organization, the Oregon Department of Education, to determine some initial avenues that we might be able to do that on. What else? So again, we constantly talk about what our priorities are. And I think that this is an ongoing conversation, and I hope to revisit that today, and hope that the content that's shared today will kind of ignite some ideas and inspire some thoughts about what we want to start working on and what we're going to do. I have shared a manual with the youth committee members that was authored by the Coalition for Juvenile Justice. It's their youth manual, which is an excellent resource for state advisory group members who are 28 and under, which all of these members of the youth committee are. And so at some point in the near future, in addition to Kibi and Andy's YDC orientation, I hope that all of the youth committee members will join me in kind of going through that manual in segments. It's a pretty lengthy document, so taking, you know, a couple of pages at a time to really help them understand in an equitable way, and to create a safe space for them to ask questions or get clarification about what their role is and how that works with our state government and our federal government. So that is something that is upcoming as well. And I think those are the highlights. So we continue this work. Our next steps were to begin the YDC mentorship. So that is something that we'll begin to try to figure out who is comfortable with meeting in person and who is prefer virtually, and to determine a time frame to start setting those group, like an overall initial group kind of meet and greet, and then for the mentors and mentees to then go and determine their own what they're going to do. Like, that won't be on us anymore. It'll be between the individual mentors and mentees. And also, one big thing that we kind of keep coming around is if we want to revisit doing a summit as the Youth Development Council Youth Committee, putting on some type of event like Anya and I just attended, that would be open to attendees across the country, across the state, most likely, but you never know, to put on a planned program of activities and events and forums and discussions about the work that we do and how to move this work ahead. So I keep coming back to that, and hopefully we can interject that into the conversation today. So those were the highlights from the last meeting. Is there anything else that you all would like to add that I may have missed or that you can recall?
I think you covered everything. Nothing comes to mind.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Maricela, Diana, Andy, Kiwi, Isa 2.
All right, our next step, our next agenda item is we're going to watch a short film and just have an open discussion. Are the questions listed somewhere?
You all have the questions and I have the questions, and we'll just kind of freestyle those and, you know, allow the public to, I will kind of moderate the questions that I've shared with you all previously. So if, just to introduce this video, it is a video from the Annie E. Casey Foundation, and they have a new initiative. And because we're running short on time, I will ask if one of my colleagues, Lindsay or Melissa, could please put the link to the full video in the chat so that you all can go back and watch it. But they have a new initiative. We're still going to watch the panel discussion amongst the youth, but they have a new initiative called Thrive by 25, which is to try to basically do what the name implies, maximize and amplify the ability of young people 25 and under. Between 14 and 25 is their target age range to thrive. And they have a paradigm of specific points of how they plan to do that. And the executive director of the Annie E. Casey Foundation introduces the video with sharing the Thrive by 25 initiative, and then leading into this panel discussion. One thing I just wanted to point out that we won't get to hear is that Mr. Jim Casey, who founded the Annie E. Casey Foundation, I learned something new. He started UPS, and he left school at 11 and had, you know, a very challenging journey from, you know, childhood. His father died in his youth, and he had many obstacles, and he went on to start the whole UPS company that we know today, not alone. But I hope that you all put a pin in that and go and look at his story, and in his understanding that all youth will not have the same opportunities or resources that he may have had. He started the Annie E. Casey Foundation and named it after his mother, because she was a very integral part of his growth and success into the man that he became. So I hope that you all take some time to learn about Jim Casey. I was quite fascinated by his story, and then to watch the full video. The video ends with a panel of lieutenant governors who kind of follow up to the youth discussion that we will watch. So if Lindsay could get it started. And the way that I'm going to do this, the moderator asks the youth specific questions. And so there are about 5 of them. So as she asks the questions and they answer, when they get through the 4 panels to answer her each question, I will stop and allow us to reflect on it so that we can kind of answer those same questions. So Lindsay, just listen for my prompt or in the chat of when to pause the video, please. And we're gonna have to do it a little bit more readily because we are running a little bit behind schedule. But if you could go ahead and whoever is going to screen share the video started at the the youth panel section of the video.
Okay, I'm trying to share my screen here. Did you want to start at the 10-minute mark?
Yes, the chapter that says youth panel.
Okay, that's what I've got it on. There we go, share screen. Screen 2. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, thank you. And hopefully you can just make it full screen when you have the opportunity. First, we want to make sure we can hear.
Yeah, let's see if we can hear.
As you've just heard, there is exciting work happening at the foundation, and it will involve many of you. Next, I would like to introduce the moderator of our panel of young people. As we engage them in our work, it is important to hear from them and to understand their aspirations, their strengths, and how effective they can be as true partners in confronting our challenges. Kayla Powell is a young fellow in the Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative, which is a part of the foundation. She is a relentless and passionate advocate and leader for systems change, transformational relationships, and positive youth development. She is the state of Iowa's National Youth in Transition Database and Youth Development Coordinator, overseeing the state's NYTD efforts in advancing youth engagement and positive youth development within state agencies. She formerly worked for a YMCA, leading their youth development, social emotional development, and equity and inclusion efforts. And among other things, Kayla is a court-appointed special advocate. With that, I turn it over to Kayla, who will introduce our panel. Kayla?
Thank you for that introduction, Scott. In the wake of this shift to focusing more resources and efforts on youth and young adults, we were asked to have an authentic conversation about what is most important to young people and what it will actually take to share power and center young people as leaders. The hope today is that everyone who is listening in understands what is top of mind for young people and really uses this conversation to ground the work that you all are doing moving forward. The 4 panelists with me today in our virtual living room represent some of Annie Casey's current grantee partners who lead with youth-centered advocacy and organizing and represent a diversity of organizations, backgrounds, and geography. While they each use different strategies, the organizations and the young leaders themselves exemplify building power in communities and centering young people's voices and their leadership and advocacy. So with us today, we have Sam Schimmel. Sam is a St. Lawrence Island Siberian Yupik and Kanatsi Indian from Alaska. He is a representative of the National Congress of American Indians Climate Action Task Force, working to raise the awareness of climate change on Native communities, and is an advisory board member for the Center for Native American Youth and the Arctic Youth Network. We also have Perla Ortiz, a Young Invincibles young advocate who is part of their Texas Youth Advisory Board. She is also a senior at St. Edward's University in Austin as a college assistance migrant program scholar. She advocates for issues affecting young adults, such as economic opportunities and healthcare. We also have Jamal Jones, the co-director of the Baltimore Algebra Project, which provides educational tutoring and advocacy for cultural competence and equity in education. And we also have Celine Santiago Lopez, a first-generation Atomi woman and organizer who envisions a future where children are able to imagine themselves as innovative engineers, savvy entrepreneurs, and more. She has participated in 3 electoral campaigns across North Carolina and Georgia, and currently organizes with Mahinte and is based in North Carolina. So without further ado, we're going to get to our panel. All right, guys, so it's clear that all of you are leaders in your work. All of you are doing the work. All of you are successfully organizing. So can you share with us what is one of the most pressing things you're currently working on? And Sam, can we start with you?
Of course. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. That's an important question that I always think about. And really, the most pressing issue that I'm working on right now is trying to make sure that youth are connected to their culture and their communities. I've grown up in Alaska, in the Bering Sea. where our traditions and our culture are the only things that have allowed us to survive for thousands and thousands of years. And right now, what we're seeing is that hunting and fishing is becoming harder. Our traditions and our ways of knowing are being eroded by climate change. Our traditional practices, we can no longer do some of them. Some of them are no longer safe. Our ice comes in too late. There's winter storms that damage our village. And what's happening is that youth are becoming disconnected from our cultural identity. And what that means is not only that fewer and fewer kids are speaking our language, but it means that more and more kids are getting involved with drugs. More and more kids are falling prey to suicidal ideation. We have in our Native communities traditional expectations of excellence that push us to succeed. It's our aunties and our uncles and our grandmas and our grandpas that are always next to us saying, do this, do that, do better. This is how we do things in our culture. And when that goes away, you see other things take that place. You see kids with too much time on their hands. You see alcoholism, you see drug abuse, you see things coming in. And so right now I'm working on a project to connect elders that want to teach with youth that want to learn, to make it so that we can do knowledge assessments in our communities and then deficit assessments among our youth. So that way, if somebody doesn't have an uncle that knows how to hunt or an auntie that knows how to sew skin, they can find somebody else who's willing to teach them, who's willing to pass down those traditions and pass down that knowledge. And so I think that is really the most important thing that I'm working on right now.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks for really painting the picture of what connections to adults mean and why it's so important. Perla, what's one of the most pressing things you're working on right now?
Okay, and thank you very much to Casey for providing the platform for us to speak today. One of the most pressing matters that I have been working on lately has been the push for higher education for both middle school and high school students. It is a community effort in the sense that it doesn't just involve the students. It is change and significance for the whole family, for the whole community itself who's receiving the benefits of this person's education. I think it has been difficult in the sense that there are people who still don't know a lot about the college application process or even how to get involved in their students' education. Being from a low income minority community, first generation, this access to information is next to none. Of course, there has to be some communication from the school district to the families, but it is not always present. And it is worrisome because that impacts the advancement of the students. And as time is going by, it feels like the progress that is being made is minimal, which is why I decided to put my energy into these efforts.
Thanks, Perla. I want to underline that access to information point, because I think when we talk about sharing power with young people, that's like a non-negotiable of power sharing, is that access to information, including translation. So I'm just wondering, like, from your perspective, what can we do about that? What can folks listening do to improve that access for information?
Absolutely. Very much so, that access to information, right? Translation, you mentioned something that a lot of people who are trying to make a change ignore, but we can no longer do that. Not only because translation does only involves a language, for example, Spanish or other, in my case, Spanish. In other circumstances, it can be anything else, but in translation, you also have to understand the audience's, the community's culture, and why these ideas of perhaps leaving home don't translate directly. As a Mexican woman, it was frowned upon that I left my home and my mother's side to pursue a college education 800 miles away. And that is the case for many of these students who are trying to make a life for themselves and pursue their education, but are held back by things such as these. And with this access to information also comes the access to the family's opportunities, the family's not only economic opportunities, but also the access to healthcare, the access to just being informed about the current state of their community and what laws, such as perhaps immigration laws, concern them, so that they understand what how they could be stable enough to protect in a sense, but also support their student in pursuing their education.
Thanks for breaking that down for us, Perla. Celine, what are you guys working on?
Thank you. And I see a lot of similarities with what Sam and Perla have mentioned with the lack of information, the lack of resources and things like that. And so for me over here in North Carolina, I've actually had the opportunity again to work in 3 electoral campaigns in less than a year throughout a pandemic. And with that, it's really shown me a different perspective of what it is to work in electoral campaigns, how it is to strategize in the South, and what voter suppression is. It's a huge issue, especially for a community that's always, scooted under the rug in a political spectrum. The Latina community is never really mentioned when it comes to these elections, electoral campaigning. There aren't many organizations that go out of their way to use their resources for the Latina community, to provide them that information, to educate them and things like that. And so for me, my main passion in doing this work is to, mobilize the youth, get them engaged, host spaces where they're able to learn more about how does this candidate or how does this policy affect the community that you live in? Why is it so important to get involved in North Carolina politics and understand that we have to, change how we feel about the state. We have to make it our home because, our parents are here now. Some of us are first generation, some of us are immigrants. Who knows what background we come from, what journey we have gone through, but now we're located in this area. And instead of, having to continue to feel afraid, to feel, that this isn't a place that's for you, it should be the other way around. And that's the way that I can find is through getting involved politically, civic engagement and things like that. And so that's really what I'm out here doing in North Carolina.
And Celine, what I also hear you're doing is that you're creating these safe spaces, you're cultivating emotional safety, so these conversations and this type of youth leadership can take place. And I think that's a theme of power sharing that doesn't get brought up enough. So thank you for lifting that. Jamal, what are you guys up to?
You would bring me up after everyone. Hello, everyone. So over in the Algebra Project, we do a couple things. We do a lot of math literacy work, so kind of tutoring, if you will. And then there's also a bunch of educational organizing around advocacy issues that have to do with education, of course. And so really the most pressing thing for us has been this conversation around educational equity, primarily because the students that we work with and which is a citywide space, but the students we work with, a lot of the conversation is about what does the world look like when they become of age, and particularly what does that look like in a world absent ancestors or absent some of the elders. And so a lot of that work in terms of the education space has been, one, helping facilitate some young people to look at policies like discipline and figuring out, do we need SROs or school police, and navigating and helping them figure out campaigns and maneuver through that, or even identifying, Maryland has a bill that was recently vetoed that's back in session now called the Kerwin Commission, and is essentially a $4 billion investment into education. And one of the things that is clearly circling the minds of students in Baltimore is well, how much of that money comes to us, which is partially an equity question, but digging deeper into the context of educational equity, how is that money spent? Where do those funds go? How is it, what are the accountability metrics, and how are students centered in that as the primary end users and the primary consumers of the educational product?
Thanks, Jamal. I think we could probably have like a whole conversation about money as it relates to equity and as it relates to power. Definitely connected. So if all of the things that you guys are saying
Lindsay, could you pause right
implemented
there, please?
perfectly were to happen.
Thank you. So this segment of the discussion was about pressing things that they are working on. And so for us to try to figure out what things that we might work on, what our priorities are, I think it starts with what we are passionate about individually and collectively. So we heard them saying that, Sam said that he was trying to connect young people to their culture. The first young lady that spoke said that she was trying to push for higher education and access to information and family opportunities. The next young lady said that she was trying to increase civic engagement and create safe spaces. And Jamal, one of the key words was educational equity in his math tutoring program and other things that he does. So in the chat, I put something for you all to reflect on. If there were one or two things that you could just, had a magic wand to change, what would that be? Like, what is something that is extremely that you all are extremely passionate about, that you have experienced or someone has experienced, that is a result of our world or our government or our systems that need to be changed, and that you would fix so that you would have possibly avoided that experience, or your family member or loved one or someone after you will not have to go through that. Anyone can start off, volunteer. This is optional. This is volunteer, so I'm not gonna call on everyone, but hope that you all will chime in with some of your thoughts.
I thought so basically putting one of the things I would change is just putting people that's empowered, that is basically that understand us cultural, like I would put Hispanics, African Americans and stuff like that understand our background, understand where we're coming from. It could be like mentor wise, counsel wise, principal wise, anything like that belongs there, understand where we came from. They could be considerate of our situation and help us out way better. So growing up, I had a mentor, but he was white, and I was a troubled kid. So growing up, I would never want to open up to him because I knew from there he did not come from where I came from. He didn't understand me. He didn't understand why I was so angry growing up. So, but the only thing he could just say, "Oh, I understand." Deep down, I know you didn't understand. So really, just put people in power that actually understand this, like staff, put staff in facilities where they've been through juvenile, they've been through the juvenile system and they changed it around. And staff that understand us, that been in that situation, so when they come work around us, they could sit there and tell us how they turned it around, instead of people sitting here saying, "Okay, I know someone that turned it around. He did this by doing this." No, I wanted the staff to come and show me how he did it, because he was in the same situation as me, and he turned it around himself. So I want to be around people that's like that, and those that put people in power that understand this, and can be considerate of our situation. And then another thing I thought of was just what was it? It was just basically just being able to the opportunities I got up here and put them in a playing field that's equal for all of us, like welding, barbering. Like there's a lot of things I did not know I was able to do until I had to get incarcerated to know that I'm able to do that. Like I never knew college was even an option for people with felonies, anything like that. So it's just like a lot of things I feel like if it was in our, that's one thing I would change, to put everything equal in people's playing field, so they at least know they have the opportunities, and this is how you could do this.
Excellent, Kibi. You see, I'm like over here shaking my head because you raised some excellent points. And what I interpret you to have said, the first thing was to diversify our workforce, and the people who are interacting with youth need to be a representation of the youth that they are working with, and to have similar experiences and backgrounds so that there is a connection and an ability to relate to a likened journey. And then the opportunities to be able to have access to opportunities and enriching things before you get involved in the system, to make those readily available to youth prior to having to be in the system to get those opportunities, which I've heard people say many times, which you are right on point. Like, I've heard juvenile directors say that in order to get services for their young people, they had to enter them into the juvenile justice system, and that shouldn't be the case. So excellent, excellent points. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else like to chime in?
I can go quickly. You know, when I was listening to them speak, the thing that came to mind is the global distribution of wealth, because I feel like that results in so many issues. And, you know, one of the folks talked about like alcoholism, drug abuse, and just youth having too much time on their hands. I don't think about it like that. I think about it as a lack of opportunity for youth, you know, educationally, actual activities, you know, economically. A lot of folks are like, oh, you know, we don't need to pay these young folks so much money or whatever when we were talking about minimum wage. But the fact is that some of these youth are unaccompanied youth. Had I not had a job, I would have been like, as a youth, relied on, you know, being able to make money myself, you know, and I know that there's so many other youth like that who aren't able to get the financial support from their families, or just don't even have families around. So yeah, I think it all comes down to just having, you know, having money, you know, that's where the opportunity comes from. And then also another thing that I thought was really important for me growing up was mentorship, you know, and so like Kiwi mentioned, I was completely on my own by the time I was 15, you know, like had I not had access to certain mentors, like I don't know where I would be, you know, so I think that that's extremely important too.
Thank you, Maricela. Absolutely. Like, access to opportunity is one of the biggest barriers, I think, for young people who come from high risk background and environments. They a lot of times have never been exposed to anything outside of the chaotic or troubled environment that they live in, or that they attend school in. And so they don't realize that there's a whole new world of things available to them. And, you know, I think as systems, we haven't done enough to connect them with those opportunities. And a key thing that's repeating again, mentorships, people who can be a bridge to connecting them to the world. I consider it a box, like the inner city, the chaotic environment, the hood is a box that so many young people, and it's not just necessarily for people who come from these places, but whatever your box is, that's all that you have been exposed to, and that's all that you know. And until someone lifts you up to the edge of that box to let you see that there's so much else out there in the world that at your realm, and try to connect you with it and nurture and facilitate your access to it. So mentorships and connection to opportunities that stem, money makes the world go around. So we know that we can't do any of these things without money. So thank you.
Sorry, and I was just going to say really quickly that it's important not to separate the youth from the family. The economic issues, what causes these destructive environments, you know, like had our parents not had to work their asses off to make ends meet, had their employers paid livable wages, we probably wouldn't be in these situations, you know. And so it trickles down to the youth, and that's what we need to really talk about, because if we're not helping the families, we cannot help the youth. So we can't prevent these situations from continuing.
Absolutely. And in the conversation, I believe that, family engagement comes up later. Anyone else like to share before we look at the next part? And what they will be discussing next is, what does success look like? So in thinking about these things, these problems, these barriers, these priorities that we're developing, if we achieve success, what does that look like for young people? So just open the floor for any other comments about anything that you would change, that you're passionate about right now, before we listen to this next segment.
Sanji?
Go on. Yes.
I've been doing some research on why certain youth who are at high risk of escalation further in the juvenile justice system don't go there. They're being effectively worked with in communities. And I just want to echo the support of all of the comments related to mentoring. These youth that I've looked at say that the reason that they're not further escalating with all these risk factors like other youth is that there is one or more adults in their life who are mentoring them and helping them navigate through difficult situations, and especially adults that are the same cultural and ethnic background as them. But this mentoring piece is huge, and that young people tell me that that's the reason that they're not committed to the Oregon Youth Authority, is there's one or more adults who are looking out for them and helping them navigate the world. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Jeff. I appreciate that insight and input. Thank you. One more opportunity to answer that first question before we look at the next segment. And if you can't think of it now, please write it down and put a pin in it, because these will be things that we come back to. So if you don't have it all framed down, please write it down and think of these questions. They're on the agenda in certain senses, like what are our priorities was basically what I want to get from you all. Like, what do you all want to work on most? So Lindsay, if you could please start the video again.
Were to be achieved, what would success for young people look like? And Jamal, I'm going to take this to you first, since I saved you for last time.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the painful part first, I guess, because a lot of times when we think about change, we think about the final product, we think about the folks who are satisfied with that, but we don't think about the process. And the process is really where the work is. It's not in the visioning, and it's not in the living in the end. It's the work in the middle. And that process is painful. Some people won't have to lose some stuff. Some people had to get really uncomfortable. There's going to be a lot of folks who are unhappy. There are agreements that were made eons ago that are going to have to shift and be broken. And there are relationships that are going to have to shift and be brokered. And there is an entire landscape that's going to have to shift. And that's going to require everyone to collectively be uncomfortable and collectively be able to keep the course until we get to the end or get to the change. Because oftentimes we tend to get fatigued, particularly in this world where there's so much work to do in so many issue areas. It's very easy for us to, and oftentimes we do, get to a place where we work just long enough on a topic that we get fatigued, and then we'll drop it or we'll pass the baton to someone else. But if we can keep our heads together for this one, I think we might be able to get stuff done.
Thanks, Jamal. There is definitely a lot to fatigue us out there right now. Perla, what does success look like for young people from your perspective?
When I think of the young people in my community, from a small little town Fairbanks, Texas, and El Paso. What could help them? Well, success for them would be accessibility. You know, having the ability to do what they want, like if they want something, that they can have that. Having the doors open, but more importantly, you know, having the chance to prove themselves. And it's unfortunate that I have to word it that way, because why would they have to prove themselves, right? Like they have so many obstacles and they have so many hurdles. And it's as if the system, you know, wasn't built for them to be a part of it. And that's where we are trying to level the field, where equity comes in, and where we have to ask ourselves why are the things that, you know, that prevent these people from being successful are, in order for us to understand what we can do, and for them to understand why they can keep going, why they should keep going, why there is a space after all for them, you know, as higher education graduates, because that's how I see them.
Amazing. Thanks, Perla. Sam, what does success look like for young people?
I think hope. You heard about the hard process of getting somewhere where there's change, or being able to have young people sit in those positions of higher education. And what that really requires is hope. I've been in communities where there isn't much hope, where part of the village or part of the community is being swept into the ocean or taken out by the river that's nearby, where kids are told in school by teachers that they don't have a future, that they should just drop out. And what that does is it erodes the confidence of our traditions and our culture. It erodes our ability to conquer anything and conquer everything. And so I think what success looks like for young people is hope. That ability to say that I can hold a position wherever I want to be. I can go to college. If I don't want to go to college, I don't have to. I can go and be a subsistence hunter, a fisherman. I can do whatever I want to do. I remember I talked to you guys earlier about this in the one of the prep sessions for this video call, and I had been invited to one of Casey's planning sessions around something called the Environments of Belonging Project, which looked at tracking young Black men and young Native men as a metric for if they're doing well, the rest of the community is doing better. And we sat in a room for 3 days, and a bunch of scientists and people with a lot of letters in front of them after their names, and came up with questions to ask youth ages 10 to 18 and 6 to 10 as well, about how well they were doing. And there were questions like, how often are there 2 people at home in your house where reading is taking place? Something like that. And I remember looking down at the list of questions that I had written, and on it were things like, is there fruit in your home? Is your refrigerator full? Do you have old people that tell you stories? And so I think hope isn't built always through a top-down integration of power. It's built from within our communities, where communities are allowed to succeed. And so that's what I hope to see. And that's really what I think success looks like. That confidence in oneself.
There's 2 things that I want to take a second to make sure that the audience is sitting with. The first you lifted up was this sense of belonging. And what we know about the adolescent brain is that the adolescent brain thrives off of a sense of belonging, and perhaps why school resource officers in schools is so detrimental to youth development, because they disrupt that sense of belonging for many youth within schools. So I'm just wondering, from your work and your perspective, how can a sense of belonging and a sense of hope be cultivated within communities?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things that need to come together for somebody to feel at home. I can't speak to anybody else's communities other than my own. And what that looks like is it looks like elders in our classroom. It looks like community harvesting. It looks like going out whaling, going out seal hunting, and sharing your catch. And we have a tradition in our communities, which is whenever a young person kills their first seal, first walrus, first bird, they take it around to our elders. You don't eat any of it. You go and you distribute it around your community. When we get a whale in our village, we go and have we go do something called atak, which is a big community dance. We tell directions in terms of stories. We have a common identity that's built around our heritage and our sense of place. And so I think in order to build that sense of belonging, you have to allow that into spaces of education. For a long time in Alaska, there was a large fight between the state and small communities because they were requiring Indigenous language teachers to have master's degrees and not allowing other community members into the schools to be teachers. And so figuring out ways through policy to allow community that is already present to be integrated into school systems ensures that there's a foundation for youth already put in place. I don't know where all of you come from, but I know that a classroom for me was never the most comfortable place. But I know that a classroom with one of my aunties teaching us, or a school counselor who was one of our elders, was a lot more comfortable than one that didn't have that. And so figuring out ways to integrate existing community into education systems is critically important if you want to ensure that sense of belonging for young people.
Thanks, Sam. The other thing you lifted up was the need to be partnering with communities and not for communities, which I think is the epitome of power sharing. That is what has to be happening. So thanks for lifting that up. Celine, do you have any thoughts? What does success for young people look like from your perspective?
Yeah, as what everyone else mentioned, I think it's creating, as Sam mentioned, safer spaces, whether it be in the sector of education or other sectors, but creating spaces where youth feel safer, where they're able to, have someone that they can talk to, talk about their feelings, emotions, because in this work that we're doing, in the spaces that people go into, whether it be at school, at your job, in your own home, there's a lot of emotional work that's being put out, and the youth taking on that role to take on that emotional work. There may be times where you will be reopening wounds, where you will be feeling uncomfortable, as Jamal had mentioned, where you will feel probably happy, blissful, so many different emotions. But again, that's emotional work. You're putting that in, it's being taken out on you. And so creating spaces where the youth are able to, release those emotions, release that stress, those energies, it's really important, because we don't want the youth to continue to, continue keeping that on their back, continue carrying it wherever they go as a burden. In a sense, we don't want youth to feel that way. And so for me, a success is creating safer spaces, creating community, as Sam mentioned. It's really important. It's really vital. Because within community, you're able to create resistance. You're able to unlearn. You're able to learn new things. You're able to just come together and continue changing, creating change for, the past, for the present, and for the future. And those are very, very vital. And so yes, just centering that emotional work and how much it's being taken up on both youth and elders. It's just really important to really highlight that.
Celine, I also think it's really important, because I feel like this idea of encouraging youth to talk about their emotions is something that's just talked about and not implemented enough. I do a lot of work in my state with juvenile justice, and it's clear we are failing young people because we assume that they can just do this. We assume they know emotions. We assume they know how to talk about them. We assume that they know how to deal with them. And then when they don't, we shove them in detention centers. So I think that's such a profound thing that you just said that I hope really is resonating with the audience right now. So I'm going to kind of shift us to what Jamal had alluded to a little bit earlier, like the process. So what's it going to take for us to get
Lindsay, will you please stop?
Policy, what's the minimum?
Thank you. So that part of the conversation was about what does success look like if you can achieve the changes that we want to implement. How do we define success around those things? And then we also had some comments in the chat, some things that I pointed out, and one of our guests, Robbie, pointed out, who is a member of law enforcement, about the comment about school resource officers. So I really appreciate him sharing that feedback and input and perspective. And hopefully that'll be a conversation and dialogue that we can have, just isolating that topic, because that's something that the work that I do kind of is starting to focus on. But so I open that question to you all. What does success look like if you could achieve these passionate things that you have shared? How would you say, yes, that was a success? You know, we did it, and that's the outcome was fill in the blank.
I would say equality. Like, for example, there's multiple examples, just like resources, just treatment wise, or just like the way that people get treated. And it's just like for juveniles, I was like, basically in school history, when they teach history, I didn't learn about my culture, my history until I got up here, where I had what's called African American coordinator, and he teach me about my history. In school, I didn't learn it at all. In school, it was just mostly from the white perspective on how everybody's history is. It's not like they asked us. It's not like they asked Africans or Hispanics from their perspective. It's just like from their perspective. So I probably it'll be way better if they ask us, and then we is able to teach them. That's equal playing field for a lot of us. So we learn, like, even education wise, they're just like all having a chance to have that knowledge, to know that we could do this, and having the steps. Grown up, we didn't know that we were able to do this, and even if we did, they didn't teach us the steps like everybody else have. Everybody else have dads that have been in place, or grandparents that have been in place already, that have been in power, and so it get handed down to them, and they already know the steps to be in that power, to be in that place. We don't have that chance, so it's not equal, it's not fair to us. So just being able to have that knowledge and just being equalized against with everybody else, that's a success to me.
I love it. Level the playing field, make it equitable, have access to all the tools and the knowledge and the resources that you need to be successful, and overcome some of these institutions and systems that have historically oppressed certain groups of people. I love it. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? See, so that's sure anyone else not like to chime in on that question? If not, we can, because the next part of it is juicy and we are running out of time. Actually, the next two portions of it, and I don't know if we'll get to one of the main questions, which was how can government officials, people in policy, in these programs that make decisions for youth, center youth and young leaders. We may not get to that one, but that'll be a conversation that we can come back to, and it's already ingrained in what we're talking about. But the next question is, what is it going to take in order to achieve this success? What's the process? So Lindsay, if you would please play. I thank you very much.
Model shift. Jamal, what do you think?
I can't say that there is a policy, because similarly to like what Sam said, and I hope everyone can like remember this centrally, every community is different, and what it like, you have to tailor policy to each community. And if you don't take the time to do that, you're just being irresponsible. Like, that's just kind of the flat line truth. And so there's that. But I'd say like one policy or one type of policy step that we could probably begin to take has to do with like how we spend money and how folks go about the expenditures of money. Similarly to the work that I was saying before about the work around Kerwin and the policy work for education. Education, there's a lot of money spent on it, whether you're talking about out of school time resources, in school time resources, people's salaries, people's benefits, whether you're talking about like the non-personnel expenditures, whether you're talking about like policy groups that get pulled together. It's a lot of money that gets spent on education. But the question of like, where does that money go is always a question to me. So like an example of that is, I don't know, let's say that there's a policy similar to the minority set-asides, which is a policy that was developed by a congressman out of Baltimore City a couple decades back named Parent Mitchell, that essentially a label that took some money or took a percentage of federal contracts and allowed for minorities to get some dollars. And that was essentially the policy that became the like front runner policy for all the national policies that created minority set-asides and created some ability for like communities that were not white male communities primarily to get some resource and start developing some economic independency, building up some community sustainability and some resources. And so like, let's say that there's some policy shift to say, you know what, the money can't by law, by way of, if you do this, we're gonna take it back. Right, like let's set up the rules so that the money don't flow unless it go where it needs to equitably. And what I mean by that, just an example, a city like Baltimore City, where there are primarily, it's like 70% Black students in the city, there's no reason why most of the out of school time providers are white nonprofits. Right, like those folks usually are not as connected to organizations in the community. They aren't as connected directly to those who are serving and directly with folks. To what Sam is saying, there are a bunch of mom and pop organizations who may not be your traditional organization that's lifted up super duper high, but they have high impact. They know the community. They know that base, they can move folks to get anything done. And quite frankly, that's the like type of policy that, or like that's the type of situation that you need resource for. Whether you're talking about capacity building of the individuals, or you're talking about the money to get stuff done, or you're just talking about the money to convene people to talk about this stuff, right? Like policies that direct money back to community in a direct way, primarily like if we can access community as resources rather than deficits or rather than like nuisance, and say, what are your benefits or what are your capacities? And let's figure that out. Like, let's contract with the local mom and pop to do whatever. And that's a consulting gig for them, builds up their resume. And now we have some economic ability to do stuff that's beyond these regular players who are traditionally either the corporate folks, the really big nonprofits, the really big policy folks, or the really big foundations, which to Sam's point, we have to start building this thing from the bottom up, and that's going to be the grassroots folks.
Something I appreciate about what you said, Jamal, is you lifted up where is this money going, but then you also lifted up who gets to decide where this money goes. And I think when we think about power sharing, like, shouldn't that be the people who are receiving those services? When we know that those who are closest to the issues, closest to the services, are the ones who are going to have the solutions that are going to work. I think that was excellent. Perla, do you have any thoughts about what it's going to take to get there?
I definitely do. To highlight some of the things that Jamal was saying, I think two stood out. You know, working with the community, and the other is the impact. You know, as we have this idea of intent versus impact. You know, you can intend to do wonders for a community, but while you have to work with them in order to know what's working and what's not, because unfortunately, it is a process. And I'm pretty sure that Ann Casey had this in mind when, you know, deciding that this wasn't going to be like a one-time thing. Oh, we're going to help the youth for this amount of time, you know, but this is the beginning of a process. Or this is the beginning of a process that'll last longer in order to serve more people. And that's the thing. Whenever you're serving people, you can't make it conditional. You know, they need the help. And you can't expect them to, you know, meet you somewhere. Instead, you have the resources, so you meet them where they need to be met. And in that instance, you know, I speak to the policymakers, the lawyers, and those, you know, those in power who are representing, speaking, and, you know, deciding for the people who need these services, but who ultimately gave them, you know, the power by putting them in office, by being elected to the places where they are elected. And, you know, that decision making should be derived from the people being served. You know, listen to us, hear us out, look at the data, like it can't be ignored. Level out the disparities, because they're too obvious. And, you know, the instability of this community, these communities depend on those decisions being made every single day. So following up is crucial. You know, wrap around and make sure that what you're doing is serving the people that you're making the decisions for.
Awesome. That intention versus impact, that's a lot to unpack. Thank you. Celine, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, going off of what Perla talked about, having intentionality, I think this word intersectionality, you know, it's always being used by people on social media and things like that. But it's not only a word, you know, for academics or for activists, you know, organizers. It's not just a word for that. It should be, you know, it should start to be implemented within, you know, our government officials, within candidates, within people who are going out, you know, with their way to run for this position or whatnot. You know, when they're going to start making these policies or want to implement them, think through them as like through an intersectional framework, because it's not black and white. It's like so many different people, you know, that have diversified this country. And it's, you know, it's time to stop putting like erasure, you know, it's time to start committing that act and only think that there's only, you know, one solution that will profit, you know, the rich or whatnot, you know. No, it's like that's it won't work anymore. I mean, we've seen so much change now. We've seen people start to, you know, become very vocal about what they believe in, about what should be just and things like that. And there's so many cities that have undergone so many, you know, terrible things and whatnot, you know, caused by policies, by government officials and things like that. But, you know, here you have organizers, you have people who are putting in their effort to go out and talk about, just to go out and inform people. I mean, when I went to Canvas, I was always, you know, greeted with such gratefulness and thankfulness from first-time voters, because it was the first time that anyone had ever gone out of their way to go ask them, what do you care about? What have you seen has been an issue in your own community? You know, and it was the first time that they ever heard someone come and ask them their opinions, which just shows you how like much of an issue that is on like a much more bigger spectrum, right? And so I just think it's really important to start implementing this intersectional framework. You know, when you're going to do policies, you're going to implement these things and whatnot, you have to start thinking through that. Because it's really important. It affects people's lives. You know, all of us come from different backgrounds. There's so many issues at hand, but if you don't, you know, put your part into it, if you don't give your own intentions to like, okay, I'm actually gonna do my own research, I'm actually gonna go out of my way and ask people, talk to them and be like, what is wrong? What do you see as an issue? Then you won't be able to, you know, like find the actual like issue at hand, you know, you won't be able to try and solve it. And so that's just a really huge part that I want to highlight. And also just coming up with different solutions. There's not just one solution, you know, asking people again, what do you think the issue is? How do you think it would be a better approach to it, you know? People come up with different solutions, you know, there's so many different ways to answer a question. And so again, you know, going out of your way to asking people, you know, asking what they truly care about, what they truly think, you know, can be an answer for such and such issue really, really helps. And so, yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Celine. So for the sake
Lindsay,
of
can you please stop there?
what transition us to the next question, because I know all of you have a lot.
So we've been kind of going at it in the chat, some of us anyway. But one of the questions presented was what policies or policy can be put in place to help achieve the outcomes that we want for young people. And then Brian posed a great question based off the very last young lady's comment about intersectional framework. And I agree, that was definitely in my notes. Like, what does that mean to you, like intersectional framework? And just at this point, you know, we're closing and winding up. So any comments that you have, any questions that have been posed that you would like to answer. And one of the last things that this panel did before I kind of put something in your spirit to marinate was their mic drop comment. Like, you dropped the mic, this is what you think about the work that we do to amplify youth voice and to empower, to engage them, to make a difference in this, everything that affects the life and youth development of a young person. What is your mic drop comment? Like, if you can't think of it now, we can open up with that in the next meeting. Like, you dropped the mic at the beginning of the meeting. How about that? But so I'm just going to open the floor for anything. I see Kiwi has been like coming strong in the chat. I appreciate your just coming in and getting right in tune with sharing and providing your brilliant perspective along with the rest of you all. So anyone that we haven't heard from would like to share first, definitely open the floor. If someone who hadn't had the opportunity to speak would like to share some thoughts in their mic drop comment, or whoever would like to go ahead and share what's on your mind. I know y'all got something brewing in your spirits and your minds.
I agree with Brian, what Brian said in the comments. Intersectional framework is basically like when I was in psychology class, there was an older male. He didn't get accepted into his into the job that he had because of his age. So I feel like a lot of times that should be a policy. A lot of times where it comes to work, or where it comes to just looking at people, don't look at them because they're colored. Don't look at them what's just in front of you. Like, a lot of times people look at us, they look at us as just numbers. They look at us as just people that's just in jail. Like, look at us different from that. Look at us now. Andy's in college. He was going to college when he was out. Just look at all the opportunities that we took and that we're stepping up to help out juveniles and just stuff like that. So just look at us different from what is in front of you. Actually try to get to know us and see where we're coming from and how and try to understand us.
Try to understand us, look at us beyond just the first layer. I love it.
Andy, do you have any thoughts?
Absolutely. Anyone else like?
With everything that's been said, I mean, it's a lot to take in, and for now, like, I just want to ponder on that and come back to you guys on the next discussion, because like, this is a lot of great information and I've just been like thinking about it a lot. So I just want more time to process it and just sit on it, just to come up with something more that could be more depthful and comprehensive for the next discussion. So thank you though.
That's a great input. And I will definitely be holding you to that. I might like DM you, Andy, in the next meeting, like you said you were gonna reflect and contemplate, like what do you have to share? But I will do it so that it's just a direct message. But I'm sure you will remember to bring your mic drop comment at the next meeting. Anyone else? Diana, we haven't heard from you. Would you like to share anything?
Yeah, I wanted to like hear from others. So I was just trying to take a step back and like allow, but I think it's hard for me to pinpoint. I genuinely imagine and see a world where a lot of these systems don't work, where we've come up with new systems and we've abolished and done away with a lot. I think as a country, we tend to put band-aids on a lot of different things, but unless as a system, we really like change the entire infrastructure, I feel like we're gonna come back because we're like patching the roof, we're patching a window, we're adding insulation, but the foundation is not stable. And so for me, it's even hard to like answer this without thinking of the broader picture. And I'm glad like Maricela touched on family earlier, because I'm like, it sucks. And then for me, at least, like being a first generation, having to navigate this, like a lot of the work that should have like, not should have, but that my mom, like, you know, or like parents, older people, like older adults in my life could have done, like fell on me. And that was really hard to navigate, trying to be a youth, but also like make adult decisions that didn't fall on me, but still fell on me. And so, yeah, I don't know, I just envision and reimagine like a different world. And so it's hard for me to really like pinpoint and say one specific thing. Because I'm like, I think of like the school to prison pipeline, and I'm like, unless we change like how, you know, SROs impact and work with our youth. Yeah. And then like SNAP, and then there's like a lack of trauma-informed practices. So folks who need services are then like, oh shoot, this is a burden. Like I'm a burden to someone now. Like I don't want to ask. So now my kids will be at home with no food perhaps, and might have to go shoplift because, you know, and so there's just a lot going on in my head, and I'm just like brain dumping right now.
We love it. I love it. I think I wish at some point, like one thing that CJJ does in a lot of their meetings is a jam board. And it's just like a digital whiteboard where you can put, you know, ideas come in that. And basically, you kind of touched on something that was so profound, which is there's so much that needs to be changed. And like, but again, going back to how they intersect, they all eventually have some type of intersection, and we can't fix everything. But I think once we kind of decide, like right now in this frame, in the next 6 months, in the next year, in the next 2 years, what are some of the things that we can really make a significant impact in with our collective body and our council and our agency and our stakeholders, our partners, like doing those things that we can do well and then building upon that. I did want to open up for any public comments before I kind of segue back to something that hopefully we can think about for our next meeting. Robbie, really appreciate you joining us and being active in the chat. Would you like to share anything?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. There's a lot of flaws in the juvenile system, and it's driven by so many different political pressures. I'll be honest, I don't have a good answer to fix it. A lot of what they call corrections doesn't correct it. You know, spit people out of that system and makes them worse than they were. You know, I've seen it. And like I said in my comments, some of these school officers have missed an opportunity to mesh with some of these kids. And that's epic, depending on what their home life is. Having worked in a school system, it made me appreciate, you know, really how fortunate I was growing up. I mean, I didn't have an easy life, but you just see the kids there. So I think you guys are doing some good work here. I'd like to be part of it if I can.
Awesome. Well, definitely. Will you please put your email address in the chat?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. So Maricela texted that she has some issues, but I think I saw her rejoining. So what I thought about, because this was a series, this was like part 1 of 3 of their youth summits. And in the third one, it was a conversation about people in media and radio and journalism, and there's certain program for youth who are wanting to be or who are like in those fields. But they have like radio shows and they do radio work. And one thing that's huge right now are podcasts. And, you know, the definition of a podcast is relative, but in essence, I think it's like conversations, interviews sometimes, or just panel conversations. A lot of time it's more intimate. So I was like, what if we could do and develop and create our own podcast? Because right now, you know, we have to use these virtual platforms because of the current state of public health in our country. And so, like, I hope you all contemplate on that. Go out and listen to some different podcasts. Like, we can invite all of these people that we work with, or to highlight youth in the work that they're doing, to allow youth to have voices. So just initially, I know we're a minute over. What do you all think about that? Like, just off rip, first hearing it.
Can
Nobody?
we talk? Yeah, can we talk about it in our next meeting? Our next youth meeting is November 12th. And maybe we can talk about like whether we want to do a podcast or another like summit, or, you know, like what we think would work best.
Absolutely. You know, as I stated, I want you all to marinate on it. And the podcast is something, in my opinion, if we decided to go down this route, that would be ongoing and could possibly lead into a youth summit. But I think we definitely capable. I think it's relatively reasonable as far as like resources and how to figure it out, how to do it. But I hope that you all will think about that. That's something that I will ask you all to reflect on. And in between now and November, I will try to share some resources or some examples of what I'm referring to for you all to kind of have some ideas. And I'm sure, you know, you all are brilliant. You all know what a podcast is. Brian, did you want to say anything before you sign off?
I just appreciate everybody's time, appreciate the attention. I wrote a comment in the chat. As a part of the onboarding and orientation, we'll talk about our strategic plan, because there's some specific ideas that our broader council have had a chance to kind of weigh in on and share, and so which we should build on, right? They're broad ideas. They're not necessarily in the weeds. So the Youth Summit has been talked about, and podcast or other communication vehicles. We know we need to think about how to champion youth voice, and so maybe there's some things that are there. So I just encourage y'all to, we'll do in our orientation, we'll talk more about the strategic plan so that we're grounded in that as we think about ideas. But just appreciate deeply everybody's time, attention, and great to meet you, Andy. Appreciate your thoughtfulness. Kiwi, appreciate seeing you and your contributions. And of course, Maricela and Diana, always just your longstanding commitment. Keep it up.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay.
All right. I will pass it back over to Maricela to any final thoughts and
Yeah, I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. So thank you all for your participation today. And our next meeting again is Friday, November 12th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I look forward to speaking with y'all then and in our September quarterly meeting. And with that, I'll just call the meeting adjourned. Thank you so much and take care.
thank you all. Take care. Good to see you all.
Thank you. Good to see you guys and meet you guys.